Okay, and let me see, and I can make you co-host so you can present.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so Front Porch Alliance has been in Kansas City for 23 years. It started by Village Presbyterian church members saying that they would like to do mission on the east side of Kansas City, Missouri. And so 3 ladies came over knocking on doors asking east side residents, how can we help you? And from there, it started off really small as a church missions and turned into a nonprofit. And in the last 5 years, we've moved from smaller like mission work to partnering and having bigger programs. Such as one, we have 3 pillars of programming. One is our Neighborhood Families Program. We are a recipient of Mark's Early Head Start and contract with them, where we provide 36 children from 0 to 3 home visits. And so that looks like 90 minutes a week. And our parent coaches, because we understand that our role, we call them parent coaches instead of home visitors, but our parent coaches go into the home and help coach the parents with goal setting, before first and foremost centered in education, to make sure that we are planting the seeds and actually going through the practice of getting kindergarten ready. We also have socializations, what looks like play groups that will happen twice a month. We do an AM and a PM socialization so that parents that work at any point in time will have time to socialize or have their children socialize together. And also some parents also would say time to talk to adults as well. So they also get to socialize. Health and wellness with Mark Early Head Start, excuse me, they have a robust partnership with SWOPE. And so the health and wellness looks like sometimes we will have the wellness bus come out and either have dental work for the children and or get their well child visits through that. And then we also provide community resources for our families. We are blessed to have one of the grants that will provide diapers and wipes, as well as emergency assistance to any of our families. And so we do that with Early Head Start. Our counter program to Early Head Start would be our Promise 1000 program. And so that program, we do the same things essentially. We meet every other week. It goes up to age 5, but outside of that, we pretty much follow the same curriculum on both sides, using conscious discipline as our modality, but using Partners for a Healthy Baby and Parents as Teachers as our curriculum. The second form of programming or pillar of programming is Youth Journey. So then we work with school ages 5 through 16. And so it's a catalog of 7 STEAM initiatives, one being the robotics financial literacy. We use this junior achievement curriculum. PALS is an intergenerational mentoring and tutoring program. So elders go inside the elementary schools and help the children with reading and math or any other subject they may be struggling in. Our stories are the teenagers 14 to 16 right now are creating their own podcast. And what they are talking about are right now the effects of redlining in Kansas City. And so we are hoping to have that across Kansas City in general. Right now, we are talking with Guadalupe Center since real world learning is definitely big. The next project for the kids to do, they allow the kids to choose. So we are asking if the children on West Side will also be interested in mapping what were the results of redlining in their community, as well as the children here on the East Side. In the summer, we have Real Collectors, which is a videography story collection. And so the teenagers go out in the community last year. Their topic was food sovereignty. They were curious as why their mother had to go to different stores to get canned goods at one place, fresh produce at another place, and meat at another place, and looked into the growers here on the East Side, farmers and growers. and got their story, where it got into white flight and community resources, leaving the community at a certain time. And finally, we have the Porch Storytellers, which is an art modality. We do an all call to the community and ask artists to come in and teach once a week, teach one modality of art. So that would be anything from drawing to throwing clay. Surprising, this last summer, we were really surprised. They loved when an older Mennonite woman came in and taught them how to quilt. Like, the youth totally got a kick out of that. And then lastly, we have the Beats, where we partnered with Ivanhoe Neighborhood Center, and we offer music classes at no cost. All of these programs are at no cost to families interested. Then we have community connections. So I usually say at Front Porch Alliance, we work from womb to eldership. And so we started out with our lovely early education programs with the neighborhood families. Youth Journeys are our school agers, and now the adult education, as we will start a 7-week reproductive health class starting on April 4th. And so that's for adults to females to be able to explore their bodies, learn about family planning, and learn in general. And this class actually was a spinoff from our early education programs, because the moms were wondering why their method of birth control was not working and why they were still getting pregnant. And so, yeah, wonderfully, we were able to get funding to actually help take them and walk them through the process of understanding what their body is about, and to know the signs of when you're fertile, or to ask questions about what's happening without fear. We also have adult financial literacy classes, quarterly community events, and then we focus on aging in place for our elders with minor home repair, and then the Rock the Block, which is major home repair. If I have an ask, it would be community baby shower supplies, books, volunteer for after school, adopt a family for a holiday, and attend any of our community events. And here's my contact information. So one thing that I actually am excited about within our programming at Front Porch is the fact that we do believe in self-efficacy. And with that said, many times we get into social services and folks want to tell parents, this is what's the best practice to do, X, Y, and Z. And if you don't do it accordingly, then guess what? You're doing it wrong. And so what we do is do coaching. And so our methodology is like, tell me where you're trying to go and we will support you. Here's some information and you can make your own educated decision about what's best practice for you and your family. And so that we are here to support you with any type of resources that you're needing to achieve your goal. We carry that throughout all of our programs and also work with our families. On the back end for our parent coaches, one thing that I make sure is as soon as they come in and start working, I ask them if they had not been able to afford to go to college. If they have their high school diploma, I'll make sure that before they leave, they'll have their CDA with us, at least so that they could have some type of credentialing, like to give back to the community, even if they choose to leave our organization. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I just wanted to say, wow, you guys do a lot of great things. Very, very informative. I didn't realize all the great things that you guys do.
Thank you, thank you.
And I think you had it on one of your first slides, Jatane, but I don't remember. How many families do you serve?
Oh, so in the different programs. So for our neighborhood families, we serve 130 children. In our after school programs for Youth Journeys, we serve 500 youth. And then for our elders and community education, we're about at like 70 at this point.
That's a lot.
It is, with a staff of 9. It is.
Yeah. And did you say where you host those events, the varying things that you do?
For our community events or our community like baby showers, usually they're here at our place or at Charlie's house, because that we take that opportunity to like, let us teach you the safeties of your home before the baby comes. Outside of that, we will have our play groups, usually they're in the park at Blueford Library or the Plaza Library, and finally either at YMCA, Linwood YMCA. And for our after school programs, they've been at Banneker Elementary, Truce Elementary, Faxton Elementary, Central Middle and High, and Northeast, De La Salle, and KIPP. And so those are that we either do it at those schools or right here again at our site right here off of Linwood and Michigan. And finally, for our adult programs, we have our reproductive health and financial literacy programs here at our office. And of course, like the minor home repair and Rock the Blocker at the respective locations, but families.
What other questions do you guys have?
So Shatam, how do you connect with Start at Zero or other programs such as that in your area?
So Start at Zero, and I will also say either Operation Breakthrough, Start at Zero, and Early Start, because we know them. And again, I believe in self-advocacy. So therefore, if a family, we do home visits, Start at Zero does home visits, and both Early Start and OB are center-based. And so the ways that we connect is if a child is aging out of our program, and let's just say they're aging out of the Early Head Start program because it only goes till 3, and they still would like to begin Early Head Start. So we all reach out to ask them, do you want to be center-based or home-based? And either way, I'll shoot the ED an email and just say, we want to do a soft handoff because I don't want people to get lost in the fold. And so we do a soft handoff and we'll ask the parents questions. You do not have to choose this just because it is what it is. But if you would like to, we will accompany them to go look at the center and ask them questions, because again, the population that we serve, like there was a time period that I started working here about 2 years ago, and the families were so readily to give you the social security card, all their information, because they get social services and they're so used to people just like, where's all your information? And so I was like, you don't have to give me any of that. Like, what would you like to do? And also like retraining them to, and retraining, it is actually retraining, because we're like, you do not have to give us any information. 2, we also do not need a sad, soppy story just to put you up higher on the queue. And so, and they're still learning, like, this is something I think will have to be a societal shift, because they're used to us having those types of stories and that giving you resources. And I was just saying, hey, you're able to have resources no matter what. Just tell us what you need and where you're trying to go. We'll help walk with you there.
And based on your experience and connection to these other groups, Start at Zero, Operation Breakthrough, et cetera, do you feel like you've closed the gap in terms of people needing resources, or there's still a lot of families that are being missed?
Oh, there's still a lot of families being missed. I would say because for better or worse, and hear me out because I know it sounds crazy, but for better or worse, I think our social service systems also do our catch-22. So here we do home-based programming, and to be with Early Head Start with home-based programming, like parents have to go through governance, they do their weekly home visits, have the play groups, have parent cafes, all of this. And if you look at the amount of hours they have to spend with us, they can't have a job like at all. And so, but that's what they have to do, because the benefit outweighs the cost with the type of services to make sure their ends are met. And so what I would say is that for those parents who are like either ready to go back to school or looking to go to work, that is where center-based comes in, of like, I need to take my child somewhere so that I'm able to do these things. And we recognize that. And so yeah, that's where it's like, it's a catch-22 for programming and social services, because we always want to serve folks, but we're unable. So right now we have a shortage of early education teachers in general. We have a shortage. And so where that is leaving people is, if they can't take their families to a center, then they're saying, I have to stay at home. And so then you have our job market shrinking because we have to have folks stay home depending on what the availability of childcare is.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. If your families are in need of resources around food, where do you typically connect your families to?
So first, depending on what it is, each of the families, when they enroll in the program, we give them a $300 financial assistance stipend that goes to whatever they want. And so for some of them, it's like getting a license. Others is buying books for school. Others is literal emergency assistance. Something is about to go off. And then some are just like, hey, I need groceries right now. So a combination of assisting them through their financial assistance. I would love to expand that program and do like a savings, like having a matching with someone, so that we can teach savings instead of just surviving, right? But first sales first. So with in addition to that, pantries, I'll have a list of pantries that they're able to go to, or different places that are able to provide food for them. Our biggest hiccup, though, is that transportation is the biggest issue. So with that said, though we still do those things, some of our parent coaches literally have to go shop for the families to bring them food, or we use Instacart, to bring them food because transportation is a barrier.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And are there still, so it's been a few years since we've done this, but we were looking at access to grocery stores in the East Side. And at the time, and again, this is probably 5 years ago, there were only 3. Is that still the case?
There's been the Aldi off of Price.
Okay, I think that was added after we did our.
Yeah, but that would be the only thing, like in five years, yes, that would be the only.
What,
groceries.
was it a Sunfresh put in off of, is it Troost?
It's off of Linwood.
Okay, I think that was the other one that was going in right at the end of when we were doing our project. But what I heard after that, and again, it's been, COVID's happened, and so who knows, we haven't been back there since then. At the time, I had heard that it was great and they have access to a wide variety of products, but that the expense was still really high.
I would say a combination of expense and then the youth, like the serendipitous for the youth last year to choose this topic of food sovereignty. Because even with that, depending on the grocery store, like I said, one grocery store may have like the quality meats, but may not have the quality vegetables and produce, right? And so that will be another thing when you have transportation issues and you have to go to 3 different stores for your household and carrying how many kids you might have, like, and so, yeah, because I've had people say, well, the bus is free. Why can't people take the bus? I'm like, okay, just think of this. Our average family has 3 children under the age of 6. And so one parent with 3 children under 6, come on now. Like none of us will try to do that, or we will try to not do that as much as possible.
Even if you didn't have kids, how are you going to carry all the groceries? Even if it's just you.
So, yes. And then you have to, again, 3 different grocery stores because you're getting different, each grocery store has its own specialty of what it carries that is actually good for your family.
So, and I realize I'm taking up all the time here and asking all the questions. If anybody else has a question to ask, just, raise your hand. I'm happy to pause. But the Truman Healthy Harvest Mobile Market, has that ever been a resource that's been heavily utilized by the families that you all serve?
Say it again, the Truman what?
Healthy Harvest Mobile Market?
No, I don't actually know it.
Oh, okay. It's a retrofitted city bus managed by, it's University Health now, but Truman
Okay.
Medical Center. It has fresh produce and that's it.
Okay.
So no refrigeration, no freezers, nothing like that. It is fresh fruits and vegetables at wholesale prices.
Mhm.
So some of the produce they get donated, but a lot of it they just, purchase and then sell at the same cost.
Mhm.
In the past, and again, this is pre-COVID, but I just had a meeting with their mobile market manager, and she's looking to get back into the community after having to shift because of COVID. And anyway, they are only operational during, I think, like March to maybe October,
Okay.
because they go set up shop at a location.
Mm.
And then you've got to walk onto the bus, like you can either go walk there, drive there, bike there, whatever that looks like, go in, pick up your produce, pay, whatever. And so I'll have to reach back out to her and see what they're doing and when, and if their season's going to start this year, and how to connect with both you and Start at Zero,
Yep.
Jamisha, and figure out where are some locations that might be beneficial for your families to
Definitely.
improve access to fresh, and this is again, just fresh fruits and vegetables. But if you're going to 3 grocery stores,
Yep.
their quality was always really good.
Mm.
They used to have a location at Linwood Y.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
see-
If you could, yeah, let me know.
Okay. And then I also wanted to ask about the baby showers. Are you connected to Children's Mercy's baby shower, community baby shower work?
No.
No, for heaven's sakes. All right. Well, I'm going to email you outside of this. and
Okay.
we're gonna get you connected to some of our other resources to help, I guess, expand the programming you guys are already doing.
Definitely. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great connecting.
Mhm.
Yeah. Great work.
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions?
I just want to thank you for sharing all of that information with us. That was very thorough, and there's so much that you guys are doing. So thank you for the work that you do. And especially with a staff of 9, I'm just trying to wrap my head around
Right.
all of those programs and all of that with such a modest staff. So great job.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Lori. She is going to lead the agenda today. Lori?
All right, so next up, we are going to be talking about the resources implementation group. So we did meet, I guess it was last week now. I think everything's blending together. And we kind of came up with a purpose statement. So we wanted to bring that back to the bigger group, make sure there wasn't anything that you felt that didn't fit within our larger scope. But that purpose statement that we kind of put together is to identify intentional resources for providers and families in our KC metro area, 6-county region, Platte, Wyandotte, Johnson, Clay, Jackson, and Cass counties, to promote physical activity in children birth to 5 years of age. So I know that's a lot. Put it in the, Evelyn, can you put that in the chat while I go? Thank you. I was like, I can't talk and type at the same time. My brain does not work that way. But yes, so we felt it was important to really define the areas that we were focused on as being that larger piece of the physical activity plan. And then we did determine that there were 2 separate audiences that we were working with. So we want to have those resources for providers, so childcare providers, and that can be home centers, preschools, any other types of home visitors, those types of people, and then also for families. So we didn't want to just limit that to parents, but the entire family. And there will be a lot of crossover of those resources, but the primary purpose is recognizing that they could be the same resources, or they could be specific to one kind of audience or the other. As far as next steps, we will be having a meeting Friday, March 3rd at 9 a.m. So if you weren't able to get on that first meeting with us, but you really are feeling like this is the calling that you want to get involved with this piece of our project, then please join us for that. We will get you the invite if you reach out to Shelley or myself or to Rhonda. We will get that information for you. So are there any questions about that implementation group and kind of the focus of it? We do have the beginnings of a database that has, it's a spreadsheet that has some of those resources with links, and we really want to make that be a usable document for the people, for the audiences that we are targeting. Chris, is there anything that you feel I didn't touch on that we kind of defined in that meeting?
No,
Shelley?
I think you covered it, Lori.
All right. With that, let's keep on moving then. So the next part of our agenda is the Go Knapsack report review. So I'm going to turn it over to Shelley, and she's going to give us updates on how that report came out and the meeting on it. Thanks, Shelley.
Sure. And I first want to recognize Richard for joining us this morning. Richard is from the Go Knapsack program, and he and Dr. Eric Willis have been very helpful. I hope many of you remember Dr. Willis presenting about Go Knapsack last fall, well, I guess late summer, early fall, really sharing the resources that they have available, how they interact with centers and family-based programming, their reports, etc. So after that meeting, and as we had conversations with the sector, we wanted to get a report, a local report about programs that are participating in Go Knapsack. So we requested that and have gotten the initial report. It's for programs in both Kansas and Missouri, but the counties that we serve. So it's 2 counties in Kansas, Johnson and Wyandotte, and 4 counties in Missouri, Clay, Platte, Jackson, and Cass. We have a small group of people who have expressed interest in reviewing the report findings and trying to identify what gaps there are and how this sector might help fill those gaps. And that would be an example of what other implementation projects do we want to consider to help us move forward with the strategies and tactics we've already identified for this sector. The good news is the report turnaround was super quick. The bad news is there's not a quick, easy, simple solution to any of it. If anyone is interested in joining that group, please drop your name in the chat and let us know that you're interested in joining it. We are going to be meeting on a regular basis, reviewing our findings and then learnings that are happening in both states. Chris can speak to this really better than I can, but we do know that how Kansas and Missouri approach support for Go Knapsack is different. And we are trying to learn from both of the states how we're doing it, what might be working best, and how we might support that locally. And I'll let Chris share anything else that you might be thinking of, or anything that I might have missed related to that.
No, I can't think of anything you missed, Shelley, and Rich may have some other ideas. I know we talked about last week engaging more folks that utilize the Go Knapsack tool in the Kansas City area. So I've reached out to some folks on the Kansas side, and we're having a conversation tomorrow just to get them up to speed. But you're exactly right, because the tool is used very differently on the Kansas and the Missouri side. It's not apples to apples, so to speak, in the utilization of the tool. And again, Rich, since he works with both Lisa on the Missouri side and us on the Kansas side, he can probably address that better than I.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for having me at the meeting. You all are doing such great work. It is interesting. We just had a Missouri partner meeting a couple of days ago, and they were reviewing the report as well and kind of sharing some thoughts. But it's hard to compare apples to apples, but both states are doing good work in the way they're doing the work. Missouri is a little more particular in who gets trained as a consultant and how they move folks through the 5-step process, which may lead to a lower lower number of programs involved, but potentially more programs that move through a cycle, which is kind of going through a self-assessment, going through all the other steps, and then completing a second self-assessment to see progress. Whereas Kansas, like many other states, there are lots of programs and lots of consultants that make improvements in different parts of the 5-step process, which is harder to always see the outcome gains, totally. So I think learning a little bit about the strengths of both states and then how we can see if moving through the 5-step process is the total outcome, and if so, what does that look like for consultant support, training, etc. But both are using slightly different, but both are very, I think, effective in what they're doing.
And Richard, at that meeting, did you also hear, so part of the conversation that we had at our last meeting was centers and family-based programs continue to have staffing issues.
Yep.
And if you don't have adequate staff, that sort of trumps everything.
Yeah, adequate staff, turnover rates, and this is a national issue. So it's not just unique to these two states, but recruiting is very tough at this point in time because priorities are not necessarily focused on nutrition and physical activity. It's like you said, it's staffing, it's keeping the doors open so that families can have a place to bring their children and they can go to work, and we can continue things move along. So recruiting is definitely on almost every state's monthly meeting where we talk through solutions to recruiting, and how do we get participation, and then how do we as consultants support those programs. And I think that's what it boils down to, is most of it is, I don't want to use the word hand holding, but it's definitely more one-on-one support to programs to meet them where they are, versus like it might have been done a few years ago where it was programs could go along on their own. They could do it when they wanted, how they wanted it, and it might take them a little longer, but they didn't need as much support. Now I think they do need more support from the consultants, which again it's a different model. But we'll continue to support Chris and the folks there in Kansas about kind of sharing what we see from other states across the country, their successes, incentives like what we were talking about with Front Porch Alliance. I mean, incentives have really helped programs to move along through the 5-step process, as well as get the resources they need to implement those evidence-based practices like physical activity equipment, nutrition serving equipment, things for the kitchens, things for outdoor gardens, all that kind of stuff. So that really helps support them and motivate them. So yeah, yep, nothing new.
Yeah, and nothing simple either.
No, nothing simple at all, unfortunately.
Yeah. And so that aligns with our conversation so far. So we're not, entirely, we don't have a great plan for next steps. We're still trying to gather information to figure out what would be most useful, since staffing isn't what we can provide to organizations or centers or home-based programs. We can help identify and provide resources or figure out where, where are other opportunities for funding to cover things that would support physical activity. So like what Richard just mentioned. And again, I will fully admit, I'm not in that setting. And so Jatame has already alluded to this, but we don't want to come in and tell people what they need. That doesn't work. We want them to identify what they need and then help find those resources. So that's where this whole sector becomes so valuable. It's that feedback that drives our ability to help support what's needed to gather the things and connect, align our efforts. So everyone is advancing. Kids have an opportunity to live healthy and full lives in the Kansas City Metro. So do you all have any questions about that? Do you have any other insights you'd like us to consider? We are trying to connect both the GoNAPSAC information and the resources piece. We do know that there's some family engagement types of resources that might be helpful when you look at the priorities from the GoNAPSAC report. So again, trying to make sure we're efficient with that. But if there are other things, we really would appreciate any feedback. Well, we'll keep reporting back to this group as we move forward with our monthly meetings
So
about.
Shelley, can I just ask a quick question? As far as participants in GoNAPSAC in the 6-county region, what numbers are we really looking at? Like how many participants are there in that or facilities?
Richard may
And
be able to
ballpark,
bring.
I don't need an exact number. I just.
Yeah, Richard may be able to
There's
bring the
3 in
report up
Wyandotte County or something like that.
faster. Yeah, he may be able to bring it up faster than me. But what I can tell you is there are about 1,200 kids served in Kansas and 1,000 in Missouri. So, and that's we found super interesting. So it's 2 counties in Kansas and 4 counties in Missouri. Their numbers are awfully close. Let me see if I can get in here. In terms that we do have the number of programs from both states here. When I'm on a Zoom call and trying to pull up things on my computer, it's awfully slow.
And I don't have to have that information right now. I was just.
Yeah, well, I'll run through a few of these things that's coming up right now, just so you have a general idea. So in Kansas, it looks like there were 47 programs. 38 were family child care home settings and 9 were center-based. And in Missouri, there were 25. 1 Head Start, 5 family child care home, 15 center-based, and 4 school-based. So a much different distribution in Missouri than it is in Kansas.
At least
And that
in
may
those,
also,
yeah, in those counties, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that may also be why the numbers are what they are in Kansas, if that makes sense. In Missouri, most of the programs are metro versus rural or urban. And Richard, maybe you can speak to what's the difference between urban and metro.
I think that's basically just based on what they had checked in terms of, I don't know what our I have to look back to the report and see what the defining terms were for that.
And go ahead.
I don't live in the Kansas City area, but I always think of Wyandotte and Johnson as urban, but maybe folks in those counties don't think of themselves maybe closer to the middle of the city, the main Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas, or metro. Is that what you think, Lori and Sandy? Is that how they define themselves because they're more on the outskirts of those counties?
That's what I would think is just based on being farther out in the county as opposed to inner city.
So suburban, maybe suburban is metro and urban.
there's-
Probably.
Well, it doesn't say suburban, but I'm guessing that's what urban would be. No, well, so the options are rural, metro, and urban. And in both states, all of the programs chose metro.
Yeah, I'll follow up with Eric and send you an email with that.
Okay. And the vast majority are full day programs. Whether it's home or center, and both in Kansas and Missouri. Are there other things that would be helpful? We do see, and so for those of you who aren't fully aware of this, are there 7 modules, or did we only get information for 7 modules?
There's only 7
Okay,
for now.
so there is the initial self-assessment, then there's an action plan created, then there's completing the action plan, and then there's repeating the self-assessment. Very few in our report have a second assessment. And very few actually have completed action plans. More have created them, but that may be, Richard, what you were talking about earlier, that may be part of the piece that's hard to track. Some of the programming may be doing more, but it's hard to capture in some of this. So there's a initial assessment, then there's a small drop off for the action plans created, then there's a big drop off between the action plans completed. And again, we're sort of thinking that's a staffing issue and other priorities within the center. But again, trying to learn more.
Yeah, there's
that
a,
answer?
it's a few of those things, factors. Some of it is people have completed action plans. They may not have gone in and actually said completed or hit goals completed. Like, so you could show, like, they may have gone through all of that and done the work, but just hadn't gone into the system and actually said, marked it. So when you print a report out, it's showing that they have done less than they probably literally have. So that's, again, where some of the extra support from the consultant to kind of go in and say, hey, how are you? You know, let's meet on a virtual call. Have you gone through this? You completed this? All right, let's mark that as complete. And then all of a sudden it now shows up in the report as much, much better.
Yeah.
So some of that is very minor, I think, in terms of the actual what's happening.
Yeah. Any other questions about the report or what that group is trying to work on? Okay. Well, again, as I said, we'll keep bringing this back to the group as we meet and plan. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Lori for now.
I think we're going to be playing catch back and forth here. So,
Okay.
all right. So the next thing on the agenda is the implementation projects and ideas. So I do know that we did get some follow-up information from Start at Zero. So we had those of you who recall last time, if you were on, we had got an application for Start at Zero, who wanted some resources, some basically money to help support their parent cafes. That's what they were calling those, I believe. And so they had asked for the entire amount of money that we had available. We were hoping to get some extra information from them as far as kind of cost breakdown for each event and things like that. So I'm going to pass it back to Shelley, who has more information on what they did follow up with us on those requests that we had on questions.
Yes, and we'll see if we can't get Lori, do you mind sending that report to this group? I don't know if you have everyone's emails, but, or, let me see if I can do that really quickly before I go through the report with you all. They did provide some additional information, which is fantastic. I do want to share that with you all, but let me find the report. Okay. And what I might do, as Evelyn, I just sent it to Evelyn, and as she's working to send it out to you all, I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen so you can see it. Tell me when you can see my screen.
We can see it now, Shelley.
Okay, perfect. So if you were on the call, and I can't remember if it was January or December's meeting, but Start at Zero has programming that they already lead called Parent Cafes and Group Connections. So they're existing programs, and they are working to integrate physical activity and nature-based play into those programmings. There's a little description here about what the Parent Cafe is. It's a community-based parent conversation series facilitated by hosts. And Group Connections are community evidence-informed play groups and interactive experiences. They are implementing those already at an overall cost of $95,000, and they're asking for some support for those programs. We don't actually have $20,000 to give. Our max right now is $10,000. And if $10,000 were awarded to support this, that would be all the early childhood group has from an implementation project support for the short term, at least. Their funding would go to support a combination of staff and administration to execute the program, materials, and indirect costs. It would support both of those opportunities, the Parent Cafe and the Group Connection programs. They did an excellent job updating their strategy and tactic information to show how this programming directly aligns with the strategies and tactics, both of the early childhood sector, but also the Parks and Rec sector. They're hoping to host some of these activities in park and recreation settings. Now, as far as I know, they haven't met with the Parks and Recreation sector of the physical activity plan yet, but we'll certainly connect them to make sure we're supporting that cross-sector partnership. For early childhood, it's strategy 7, both tactics 1 and 2, and I'm just going to read those for you. Strategy 7 is early childhood providers should include physical activity resources and opportunities within family engagement efforts at the regional or program levels. So this work aligns beautifully with that. And then you can see the 2 tactics, 3 tactics, I guess. One of the ones that's specifically called out in our physical activity plan is parent cafes, family events, family education, etc. So it does align very nicely. In terms of system levels, the system is really individual and interpersonal knowledge and behavior. And they highlight what other sectors should be involved in this project. And again, I already highlighted that would be Parks and Recreation. If you want to take a look right here, I don't know if you can see my cursor going across the screen, but they, as a community partner with local Parks and Rec, they would track participation in programming featuring nature-based play and physical activity. Okay, the other thing I want to highlight is what their programs, how often they would meet. So 1 parent cafe program per month, 2 group connection programs per week. They have some guidelines for the types of participants they're looking for in their programming and their outcomes. And their outcomes are very very thoughtful, very complete, really looking at some behavior change and physical activity and opportunities. I'm going to pause for just a second because I want you to have a chance to look at what's on my screen to see if you have any questions so far about what they're proposing. So we can think about what amount of money to recommend for funding, and then send this on to the core work group of the physical activity plan to make the final determination. They're getting feedback from some surveys that they already have in place. I'm trying to think about, they are going to be including their group connection programming will begin taking place in the city of Kansas City, Missouri parks or recreation centers or community centers. They are hoping to host programming on site at Lakeside Nature Center, who I believe, if I read this correctly, they have a couple of programs. One's called Mother Nature Reads and the other is called Habitat Hikes. So I love that they're connecting with existing activities that are going on to advance their efforts and expand their programming. If there are no other questions, I'll go ahead and continue scrolling down. The only thing that's still a little vague to me is the next steps after completion of the project. So they indicate very clearly they'll send a report as to the outcomes from this project. And again, we can follow up with them on this. I'd like to see what would the plans be after the project? Where would it go after this period of time? So as you think about this, a couple of things that I want the group to consider and provide feedback on. So number one is, would you recommend this for funding? So Rhonda is the sector lead that participates in our core work group meetings. Rhonda would be the one bringing this to the core work group for review. So number one, do you recommend it to go up to the core work group? And number two, if so, what amount of funding do you recommend? Keeping in mind that $10,000 is our maximum. Would you recommend the full $10,000? Are there other thoughts in terms of early childhood implementation projects that this group would like to save some funds for? And the other piece of information I'll throw out there to you all is we will connect them with Parks and Recreation to see what available funds there might be from that sector as well.
So Shelley, something I didn't find in there when I was reading through it was that breakdown of their estimated per event cost. Because I don't think we want, my own opinion, so I'm just putting it out there. I wouldn't want us to spend all of our monies on one type of activity, because I can envision maybe in the future us finding something from those reports that we want to pour some efforts into. So maybe that's incentives for the ones who are doing that and maybe complete a full cycle or something like that. I don't want to just get rid of all of our, I guess I'm a saver for one thing, so that might be part of the thing, put it away for a rainy day. But I think we may be coming up with some additional types of activities, programs that we'll want to put some money into. So I think this looks fantastic. And so I'm not saying I don't think we should support it, but I still would like to know kind of that per cost piece of it, because maybe we could fund a month, you know, a family cafe portion and the 2 events that go for that month. And that's kind of like our contribution or something to that effect. But that's just my opinion.
So I've highlighted and scrolled back up to the part of the application that includes the budget information. And it is broad. It says what the requested funds would go to cover. So it would cover staff time, materials, indirect costs. We don't have a full breakdown of their entire budget, but one approach to go along with what you're saying, Lori, is I'm totally making up an amount of money. This is just for sake of conversation. $5,000 could be awarded and it would be used for these 3 things, but they can decide how it's used in those 3 things, if that makes sense. And from my perspective, that would be adequate. I wouldn't need to see their entire budget to figure out where they're spending all of their money. I would be fine with them deciding where do they want to spend it, and pool it with whatever other money they're being funded with, and to help advance their work. But again, this group has to decide what is that amount of money. Going back to what Shatane was talking about earlier in Front Porch Alliance, I think you mentioned there's like $300 that are given to families as they get started to address needs. And wouldn't it be nice if there were some matching funds? Well, I mean, this is one of those places where potentially an application could come in where there's matching funds to support something else that's driving physical activity in some way. I don't know exactly what that would be, but that would be an additional implementation project that wouldn't be possible if the full 10,000 is given in this very first piece. The other thing is what Richard was talking about with the Go Knapsack programming and finding funding to cover costs of equipment or I don't know what other, Richard would have a better idea of the resources or whatever the centers or home-based programs would need, but that would be another potential opportunity for funding and implementation for this group to consider. That being said, if we are 6 months down the road and there aren't other implementation projects being requested, there's no reason why we couldn't revisit this and allocate additional funding if it's not being utilized for something else. Other thoughts or recommendations or?
I was looking through the report. Do they mention in there an estimated number of participants that would be impacted through this? Like at each, I said, 1 cafe per month, 2 connections, but I didn't ever see like how many expected children or families that they thought this would actually impact. Was that in there?
Well, that's a great question. And I don't think this is in the report, but I do, if I remember correctly, and I have to go back to the recording, I think they mentioned how many families they serve in the presentation that Jamisha gave a couple of months ago or last month. My gosh, I can't even remember, time flies. But that's a great question. And we can certainly ask them to add that in here. And Jatame, I don't know if you remember, but I feel like it's 100 and some families. Yeah. And that's okay. I don't expect you to know everything. But we can certainly ask that.
Yeah, because that would, you know, when you look at something like incentivizing childcare programs to make changes, you may get more families in general and more children over a period of time. So I definitely liked your thought on splitting and saving some money for other projects.
So if we just did basic math, because that's the way I like it, and we took the 95,000 that it costs for them to fully fund their program and divided by the 12 months, then that is 7 something, and then another divide it by, let me get back on that math. I'm just trying to, if we could cover even just one thing initially. So there's 12 months and there's 3 different things within a month that they do, because they have the parent cafe and the 2 connections. So the 95,000 divided by 36 would be $263.88, blah, blah, blah.
2,000?
Yes. So maybe that would be, you know, a starting point or something like that. Like, so just over 2,500, I mean, you know, $2,638 if we made it in even 22,700 is a number that could make sense in my brain as to like what we're getting from it, and knowing that that's going across for, you know, whatever, all of their operating costs, not just that event, but to host that.
And another number to throw out there
Yeah.
is to host 1 month, all 3 activities would be just under $8,000.
Which is
Yes.
pretty close to our 10,000 cap though. I mean, that leaves us $2,000 to do something with.
And a third alternative would be split it right down the middle and go with just around 5,000.
Shelley, when do they anticipate this starting?
I
Or
don't actually know. I know we asked both the length of the program, like how long is this going on? We are assuming a year, but I don't have the start date in here. I can follow up with that too.
Well, if it goes on for a year and we look at supporting a month, I would vote for we support the month of April, since that's the month of the young child and we can focus on early childhood during that month. Or even just it's week of the young child, month of the young child, but it's April. If we have our choice of that. And I agree that I think it'd be nice to be able to support a month, but like Lori said, then that's 3/4, you know, of our budget there, and leaves roughly $2,000 for other incentives to happen.
So first of all, it sounds pretty consistent that the group agrees we want to move this forward. It's a great application. It aligns with what we're trying to do and we want to support their efforts. So the second thing, the piece that's the harder one to determine is how do we move forward with an amount to recommend? And we've got a variety of different options in there. The core work group will be reviewing, as a reminder, the core work group reviews applications quarterly. They reviewed them for the first time in December. The second time will be in March. So we're really trying to move this forward so that it can be reviewed at the March meeting. The deadline for the application is March 14th to be reviewed at the March 21st meeting. So we can get these responses back from Jamisha. She's very responsive and timely and gets information back to us really quickly. I'm confident they can get us information back in terms of number of families served, length of the program. What was the other, what were the other things you wanted feedback on? Are those the only two? So we can certainly get that information back from her and then come back to the group if you'd like, or we can get that included in the application and make a recommendation for what this group thinks in terms of financial support and just send that on to the core work group. But it's really this group's recommendation that is very powerful for the core work group decision.
And Shelley,
Sure.
when you're going back to her with recommendations, I know that Chris had put in the chat, I don't know if you had seen it, but the recommendation of maybe making it family cafes instead of parent cafes, just so that it's more inclusive. Did I dream that, Chris? Is that?
You're right. Yeah, we've been shifting from that just because family units look very different and not everybody identifies as a parent.
Just so y'all know, y'all do know that that's a curriculum.
Parent cafe.
Yeah. Okay. I was just so
no,
like,
I
Oh,
did not know that. So that's excellent information. And I've shared earlier, I am not the most knowledgeable in this sector. So thank you.
yes, you're welcome.
And I think when the question was asked also, Shelley, like when they would be starting this, I thought from the discussion when it was presented that they were currently doing some of these things already, weren't they?
Well, these are, yes,
Like
these
this
are
isn't-
existing programs.
Okay, this isn't
Parent
brand
cafe-
new. This is to help support something that they've already been doing and maybe expanding it.
Yes, they are specifically wanting to increase physical activity and nature-based play in their existing programs. And as you can imagine, and this is part of this is an assumption, but it's in the application. If you're trying to connect with other organizations and things that they already have going on related to both physical activity, getting out in nature, some expenses could be they could be trying to cover the cost of partnering with those different programs or transportation or other pieces that are in there. So it says materials and direct costs, etc.
And with
yeah.
that piece in mind, now I'm shifting gears a little bit. So like I want it to represent a number to represent, but because it's already existing, this would just be adding the physical activity piece to it. So any arbitrary amount that we decide can help towards that, adding physical activity to the larger program project.
Correct. So how would this group like to move forward with a recommendation?
If nobody else is going to go, I recommend that we put $2,500 towards this project with the hope and intent of revisiting it with any additional funds that we have after we look at additional implementation projects.
I agree. I think that sounds good.
I see thumbs up, multiple thumbs up. Any other thoughts or recommendation? Okay. Well, without, go ahead, Lori.
I was just gonna say, and that would be without any, I mean, I don't think, I don't need, maybe somebody else does, any follow-up information from them. They don't need to put any more. I mean, this was very, very thorough. So I don't think for that amount that we need any additional information from them to provide that to them.
Do the rest of you agree? Okay, I see head nods. You're all on camera, by the way, you're being recorded, so. Okay, so unless there's any other questions, we will take the application they've submitted. I'll follow up with Rhonda, I mean, she can see the recording too, but follow up with her just to make sure she's aware we're bringing it to the core work group in March. And just so you all are aware, so this will be, Natalie is typically our Casey Healthy Lifestyles Collaborative support. She and I support this work group, even though we've got Katie and Evelyn on as well today. We will start at 0 with the Parks and Recreation sector for additional funding requests. And that is Katie. So Katie supports Parks and Recreation. So I'm glad she's here on this call today to help make the case that we can pool some additional money and support what they have going on.
And they currently have all of their funding available right now. So
Great. Good to know. And if we're fast enough, I don't know if they have a sector meeting prior to, they just had one yesterday, didn't they? Ah, darn it. Okay, well, we may not be able to make that by the March meeting, but we can certainly do our best to make sure it's reviewed again in June for additional funding. Okay. Well, I'll stop sharing my screen for now then. And getting
Shelley, oh, I'm sorry. As you were talking about outdoor play, I was just thinking that, and I don't know when we'd have plenty of time to think about getting this approved by state, I guess. I don't know how things work on the Missouri side, but we have, I think, 2 trainers out of Family Conservancy that they went through an outdoor learning environment training through North Carolina last year. And they'd be able to, it's specifically for early childhood professionals, but something we could think of, maybe supporting that training to occur. And again, if we have enough time, we could certainly look at working on the Missouri side to get that approved. It's already approved on the Kansas side. So it might be something to build on, especially as the warmer months. So something to throw out there.
yeah, that's great. Thanks for that.
Okay, so other part of implementation projects, we kind of already tied into it, was just keeping in mind that there's a possibility of additional resources for the implementation group to look at. So moving on from that is kind of closing this out with the next meeting is going to be March 23rd at 9 a.m. Don't forget that there is the quarterly meeting for the larger group March 2nd, and there is in-person or online options for that. Are there any updates that any of our agencies would like to share? We kind of jumped right in today, so if there's anything anybody wants to share about what they have going on within their agency that's applicable. I mean, Erin's like, you already know everything that I have going on. Katie did drop into the chat where you can register. I can talk. Okay, register for that quarterly meeting. All right, nothing else. Well, I think we had a productive meeting today. We got something decided and accomplished and moving forward. So I always feel good at the end of a meeting when there's something that's moving out of my hands and onto somebody else's plate. So really encourage you. The thing I most encourage you is talk to somebody in our field, in early childhood, and invite them to our next meeting on March 23rd. I'd like to see this group grow a little bit so that we can get our impact out there. Any comments, questions, words of wisdom to the world?
Please also make recommendations for our next partner spotlight. So thank you to Front Porch Alliance for sharing more about your home visit, your programming. It's not just home visiting. I should get off that. We are happy to have others present and would like your recommendations for who we should include and who we should feature. I'm not sure, Lori, do we have somebody scheduled for March already? I can't remember.
I know that Natalie and Rhonda were rattling somebody around. I don't remember who, so I apologize.
Well, if you know of others that would be interested in sharing more about what they do, we are always open to getting them on a calendar at a time convenient for them.
Well, thank you for sharing your morning with us, everybody.
Great to see you all.
Bye-bye.